For as long as I can remember, I believed that confidence was the answer to everything. The cheat code to life was how I thought of it. That special something that made you cool, funny, attractive. That made the difference, the key difference between success and failure, between discontent and satisfaction. And to me, the lure of it was irresistible. I decided to write a book exploring the deep philosophy of confidence. And I decided that this book was going to be brilliant. Unlike a boring, regular work of genius, this book would transcend genres by combining philosophy with fiction to unravel the mystery of confidence once and for all. It wasn't going to be the greatest book ever written, but it was probably going to be in the top 5. Maybe top 10. No, top 5. So, I set to work. But as soon as I got started, I ran into difficulties. I'm sure you know the way that in your own lives, confidence connects to everything. Well, writing about it is just the same. You can write about confidence in relation to money, politics, finance, childhood, gender, sex, class. It goes everywhere. It affects everything. Time passed. Years. And although I continued to write, it was clear that in this maze, I had lost my way. Then, I discovered the work of the 19th century German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. The core of Nietzsche's philosophy is his soaring praise of individual self-expression. Become who you are, he urges, not with conscious, rational thought, but by creativity and acting on instinct. One acts perfectly, he writes, only when one acts instinctively. As I read, I was struck by a realization. Nietzsche is a philosopher of confidence. All of a sudden, it became clear. Here was the man who could be my guide to confidence in both thought and deed. Having said that, taking personal guidance from Nietzsche can seem a perverse activity, simply because he was so miserable. His health was dreadful. His family were extremely difficult. His career was a failure. He might be known around the world today, but in his lifetime, Nietzsche was an impoverished nobody whose friends thought he should stop wasting his time and get a proper job. Of course, these sorts of things can happen to anyone. But in Nietzsche's case, there is a persistent sense that he chose to be unhappy. Looking back at his life, one is struck again and again by its sheer loneliness. He had few close friends, and those he did have, he always tended to treat as assistants or secretaries, rather than true equals. He never married, never had children, and he lived this strange nomadic lifestyle, moving from place to place with little more than the clothes he wore and the paper he wrote on. Whenever he did come close to having an intimate relationship with a woman, not often, he was racked by fears that being with her would tie him down. A married philosopher, he wrote, belongs to comedy. The one time we know for sure he did have sex, he also contracted an STI. Nietzsche never fell in love. And perhaps more significantly, he was never loved. At least, not in that way. All this leaves readers of Nietzsche with a conundrum. He lived his philosophy, but his philosophy made him miserable. When I first started reading Nietzsche, however, this puzzle was far from my mind. Like so many people before me, I was drawn, entranced by his vision of a world ruled by confidence. Today, we have absorbed this creed almost completely. Everywhere we go, we're sold the dream of confidence. And it makes sense, right? I mean, who wouldn't want to be confident? We are all Nietzscheans now. For us, like him, confidence is both the goal we seek and the means of getting there. I bought into this dream more than anyone. In my book, there were going to be no limits. Everything would be included, every thinker, every genre. In my writing, I set aside planning and structure. I wanted to let inspiration strike, let the words flow. But even with Nietzsche's guidance, I still couldn't make it work. In my personal life, things were going well. I'd fallen in love, and my partner was a brilliant writer. But even though I discussed it endlessly with her, I still couldn't find a way through. I had lost confidence in my book about confidence. And it should have been way funnier than it was. Now, at this point, you're probably expecting me to tell you how to get around this difficulty. That's how we frame confidence. It's a problem to be solved, how to get to confidence. But I don't want to solve a problem. I want to give you a problem to think about. I don't want you to think how to get to confidence, but whether confidence is worth aiming for at all. Here's why. Because although confidence is extremely useful, it is not necessarily good for us. When we make it our goal, we commit ourselves to a way of life, one that can leave us lonely, heartless, and unhappy. Confidence can make us lonely because it convinces us we don't need other people. The perfectly confident person can live without love because the perfectly confident person needs no one but themselves. In fact, if you're trying to chase your dream, you're better off having loose relationships, not lasting ones, because you want to be agile, flexible, and free, those precious gifts of confidence. Second, confidence can make us heartless because it encourages us to view people solely as individuals. You see this every time somebody is asked to be confident at work. Forget about the context. Suddenly it's their problem, their responsibility. As a personal state, confidence is self-centered. It doesn't fit well with empathy, consideration, thoughtfulness, even kindness. As a worldview, it is hard, tough, because it is at all times individualistic. Third, confidence can make us unhappy because it makes us unstable. The basic pattern of confidence is boom and bust. We believe, so we achieve. So we believe, so we achieve. Until at some point our belief in ourselves outstrips our ability to perform, and it takes a painful crash to bring the whole thing down to earth. People talk about confidence as if it's something you have or something you are. In reality, it's a process, one that runs in cycles. The more we commit to confidence, the more unstable we will be. And without stability, finding happiness is very hard indeed. In Nietzsche's life, we can see these tendencies at work. He could never form lasting relationships, so He was lonely. He viewed people only as individuals. And so in his writing especially, he could be very cruel. His life was ruled by ups and downs. So he was unstable. Eventually, these ups and downs drove Nietzsche mad. At the age of 44, he experienced a sudden burst of euphoria, followed by megalomania, before collapsing with an extreme case of what today we'd call bipolar disorder. He lived another 10 years, but never recovered sanity. Yet, although Nietzsche's life ended unhappily, we shouldn't make the mistake of thinking that he was unfulfilled. He lived precisely the way he wanted to, briefly, but with brilliance. His vision was of an individualistic world where people pursued their dreams no matter what the consequences. A harsh world in which some rise and thrive and many others fall. In my own way, in a very minor way, I too came to the point of falling. But I was lucky. Just when my confidence was at its lowest point, dragged further and further down by this millstone of a book, my partner, the brilliant writer, said, "Why don't we write this together?" It was an idea completely at odds with my vision of myself, full of confidence, conquering the bestsellers lists with my brilliant book. But unlike that idea, this idea had a chance of becoming a reality. So that's what we did. We wrote the book together, a mixture of fiction and philosophy, but written by two people instead of one. Maybe it's not one of the 5 or 10 greatest books ever written, but it is finished, and I am immensely proud of it. So, while I can't tell you how to get to confidence, here's what I would offer instead. A world of collaboration, in which we let go of our grand, world-changing dreams and instead work with each other, for each other, because we can, because it makes us happy. And the next time that someone says to you, "Be confident," or asks you to have more confidence, you can think to yourself, "No, why should I?" Because confidence is a game with no end. And the only way to win is not to play. Thank you.